Live from the SABC's Auckland Park studios, welcome to this evening's episode of the Watchdog. Here's what's coming up on tonight's show.
We are grateful to the Office of the Chief Justice for managing this difficult transition as well as they have done under the trying circumstances of lockdown.
Judges pat themselves in the back for a job well done this year. Do those who keep an eye on their work agree? 23,884 new COVID-19 cases recorded in the past 24 hours. This as the National Command Council meets to discuss what can be done. A steady rise in COVID-19 infections in provinces that previously had lower numbers is getting authorities worried. We talked to the Public Service Ministry as its department prepares to conduct lifestyle audits for government employees. And tourism business reacts to news that the United Kingdom will tomorrow morning remove South Africa and 10 other countries from its travel red list. All that and more coming up in tonight's episode of The Watchdog, which starts now. It's official. From 4 o'clock tomorrow morning, South Africa will no longer be on the UK's travel red list. The move was confirmed in the afternoon. Britain banned travel from 6 southern African countries after South Africa discovered the COVID-19 Omicron variant, a move that has been widely criticized and condemned from the time it was announced. For some reaction, let's welcome Chifiwa Chibenga, who is the CEO of the Tourism Business Council. Good evening, sir. Thank you very much for your time. Your reaction to this announcement?
Well, it is good news, Vuyo, that we have been removed from the red list once again. This is the second time around. And we have been saying that it was unjustified, uncalled for, and it was not supposed to happen in the first place. But be that it may, we have been removed today. It's a little bit, too late for Christmas season in terms of those that want to travel. But we hope that in the next 24 to 48 hours, we're going to see some sort of movement in terms of airlines, increasing capacity and people trying to rebook their holidays. But, more importantly, those that want to come in January and February now know that they can come to South Africa. The rules are clear. So overall, it's what we wanted to happen. Although we have said that it wasn't supposed to happen in the first place, it has happened. Now it has been removed. And we hope that it goes to the books of history, that in the future we don't have such situations coming through again in terms of red listing. We know that the virus is going to, mutate. It's going to have many different variants, and we need to live with it. And we hope that this doesn't continue from the UK point of view. But again, there are countries that still has South Africa on red list, including Germany, including USA, and many other European countries. We hope that they follow suit as they've done so when the UK imposed these restrictions.
But how agile are the systems, when you look at the entire chain? In other words, is it really practical? Is it even possible for, your airlines and other people to quickly turn things around, and be able to come up with flights that can still, bring people from the United Kingdom that may still be keen to, at a spur of the moment, actually, reinstate their whatever plans they may have had before the ban, or get other people interested? Are the systems as agile?
Well, the system could be agile, and it's based on demand and supply. If the airlines wake up in the morning and see that there's a huge demand for traveling to the Southern Africa region, they may increase capacity in terms of, based on that demand. So there could be, airlines are businesses, and businesses respond to supply and demand. So there is still a chance, although it's remote, that people may make up their minds and get on the planes to come to South Africa. But the more important thing is that there are families that are stuck between both countries that want to travel to see each other. And if there's capacity, they're able to travel, and they should be able to do so, in a safe way. To both the countries. So, in terms of the capacity, in terms of the agility, there is still a space for that because, as I've said, airlines are businesses. But again, I say it's a little too late because many people may have, make different arrangements for their Christmas season in terms of where they would want to go. They may have chosen another destination because they want to be somewhere where there's sun for Christmas. But we do hope that those that are loyal South African visitors, those that want to come to the region, they're still going to be reconsidering and rebooking their travel and really come and support the tourism sector in South Africa. It's going to be tough. The next 24 to 48 hours is going to give us some indication of what's going on. We're going to be monitoring that very closely to see if, we do have some sort of a resurgence in terms of bookings coming to South Africa. But it's going to be interesting times. We do hope that people come through and they do support us.
Now, if the bus has, left the station or the plane has left the airport with regard to, the Christmas period. For January going to February, which is still a good time, good season for us. The weather is normally good. Are we able as a country to quickly, over the next couple of weeks, do something, that'll get, people in the UK interested? Do we have that capability?
No, absolutely. From us here in South Africa, the trade has a capability and capacity to welcome the visitors coming from anywhere in the world. I think the message is quite clear here. We have been open for business. We continue to be open for business. And we hope that our own government doesn't stop us from being open for business. So we have the capacity, we have the capability, we have availability in terms of various products that can still welcome the guests. And we should be able to do so with ease. So for us,
is that also true is that also true from a marketing and publicity point of view?
Well, that's going to take a little bit of time to convince the consumers otherwise. But what's important is that their own governments saying that they can be able to travel to South Africa. That's why the step that the UK have taken in terms of allowing their own citizens to travel to South Africa is quite important because it instills confidence. The next thing is that other governments must follow. And when I say other governments, I'm talking about the European government must follow, including the US and Canada, to make sure that their own citizens can travel to South Africa. When their own government says that, it means that they've got confidence in what we're doing here. But for us here in South Africa, we have been ready. We're open for business. We're willing to welcome anyone who wants to come here. And we know that we can do tourism in a safe way.
Okay, and that's where we're going to leave it for tonight. Thanks very much for your time, Chifiwa Chiwenga, who is the CEO of the Tourism Business Council, on the back of that announcement by the United Kingdom that from 4 o'clock tomorrow morning, it's going to remove South Africa as well as 10 other countries from its travel red list. But of course, as Chifiwa was saying, the train may have left the station with regard to Christmas time, the next few weeks, but January and February are still good enough, and a lot of people can still be mobilized or to come and visit our country. Remember, thousands of jobs are at stake if this industry, the tourism industry, really gets completely destroyed. After the break, Public Service and Administration Minister Ayanda Dlodlo has confirmed to Parliament that it's all systems go for the conducting of lifestyle audits for public sector employees. We speak to Head Deputy. Back, Public Service and Administration Minister Ayanda Dlodlo has confirmed to Parliament that it's all systems go for the conducting of lifestyle audits for public sector employees. And to shed more light on this, we're now joined by her Deputy, Dr. Philani Machake. Good evening, Deputy Minister. Thank you very much for your time. I did earlier in the week speak to the Public Service Commission, who also said that it's all systems go. And from what the minister has said in response to a question in Parliament, you are indeed ready. Take us through what has been put in place, over the past year to make sure that you are ready for implementation come February.
Good evening, Vuyo, and good evening to the viewers. Indeed, the question in Parliament was about anti-corruption. But let me just begin by saying that we need to be aware of the international conference that is now taking place in Egypt, which is a conference based on the United Nations Convention on Anti-Corruption. Which means it's a conference of state parties that actually cooperate internationally on corruption, and South Africa is one of the state parties. Our statement was actually read today in Egypt, and we continue to be a country that vigorously is fighting corruption. And we fight corruption at various or different fronts. We fight it from the perspective of criminalizing it. We fight it from the perspective of trying to prevent corruption. There's also the need for asset forfeiture, where the assets of the state have been taken unlawfully. We have to have measures to actually manage to get the assets back. In Parliament this past week, the question that was asked was the question about lifestyle audits, as to whether as a government, we are ready to actually continue with lifestyle audits. It has become legal for lifestyle audits to be conducted with effect from April 2021. What has then subsequently followed is that the Department of Public Service and Administration has actually sent through the notice to all government departments to indicate this and to actually initiate the process by actually encouraging government departments with the use of e-disclosures to gather information on public servants so that we can be in the position to assess the information in order for us to actually manage to match the kind of information that we get in a form of e-disclosures in relation to the lifestyle of each and every public employee or public servant. Where there is no match, where we find that the lifestyle of public servants does not match the salary that they receive, then it means there could be something that is wrong. What will then happen will be that an investigation will then follow, just to actually confirm as to whether there is anything that is going on that is wrong. All the work throughout government will be done by ethic officers within every government department. And once the investigation results actually confirm that there is something that is wrong, then it means charges must be laid and the prosecution must then continue to prosecute in matters of that nature. So basically what we are actually saying is that government is ready to work decisively on corruption in government, because corruption is not good. It's the corruption that actually eats up the public purse that is actually meant for improving the lives of South Africans. There is so much of gaps in terms of delivery, and part of the problem is the fact that the money that is meant for development, growth and investment in South Africa, some of it is actually money that ends up in illicit financial flows. So there are various agencies that are involved in this, like the Financial Intelligence Center, which is also part of the agencies that are participating at the Egypt conference at the moment, the National Prosecuting Authority, and of course the Department of IDT. Yes, IDT, DTI, not DTI. Trade and Industry, Department of Trade and Industry is actually also participating. So that's what it is, Vuyo. And for now, what's just important is for us to actually manage to, as a country, to have a good strategy in place. And we are quite confident with the kind of laws that we have actually passed and the kind of strategy that we have actually developed, that we will be in the position to manage to decisively and maybe successfully deal with corruption. Okay. What you can also note is that the fusion center that was actually established when COVID-19 procurement procedures became problematic, and that fusion center currently is the one within the country that is actually leading all the investigations.
Okay. A couple of quick ones, Deputy Minister. The ethics officers who will be at the forefront of this, where are they drawn from? Are these departmental officials, or are these people brought in from outside?
The ethics officers will be of public servants who are appointed as ethics officers. What I have actually not mentioned is that there is a structure that has actually been launched by the minister. I think it was in September. It's called the Public Administration Ethics, Integrity and Disciplinary Technical Committee, which is the one that will be responsible for monitoring all of these activities that I'm talking about. Okay. That will be it's a same structure that will be working with the ethics officers within government, all government departments.
Okay. Are there targets? Are there timelines? In other words, are we going to say, okay, within the first 3 or 6 months, this is the amount of work that we would have done, resulting in whatever else is going to happen afterwards? Have you committed to such?
We haven't actually, firstly, piloted what we are going to be doing, because if we had piloted, then it would actually have given us projections. But the intention is to begin in January 2022. And we are hoping that we will be in the position to manage to cover all public servants, even if up to now, the e-disclosure was actually just focusing on senior management, that is from level 9 upwards. But what is important when it comes to lifestyle audits is for the process to actually cover every public servant, so that all the public servants are actually taken into the process, so that they are responsible and not participate in corrupt practices like bribery. And then you find that somebody lives a life that is above their means.
Mm-hmm. And just to be clear, or for the purposes of our audiences, it excludes politicians.
The process that I'm actually talking about now is the one that is actually focusing on public officials.
Yes.
And this does not necessarily mean, because I've spoken about the strategy that we have, and this is part of the strategy that we have that is now focusing on public officials. Okay. But there will be a strategy that will be comprehensive, that will actually manage to get into every sector of South African life, including the private sector, because corruption is not something that actually only takes place in the public sector, but it also takes place in the private sector, or sometimes it takes place in the public sector with the assistance of the private sector. And indeed, even politicians will be also part of the processes moving into the future.
Okay, that's where we're going to leave it for this evening. Thank you very much for your time, Dr. Philani Machaike, who is the Deputy Minister of Public Service and Administration. Now, To this story now. About an hour ago, the National Institute of Communicable Diseases announced that 23,884 new COVID-19 cases have been recorded in the past 24 hours. Now, today's numbers coming about an hour into the meeting of the National Command Council, which that meeting kicked off at 6 p.m. Chaired by Acting President David Mabuza, the meeting is set to discuss what can be done to manage the situation. Authorities in provinces that previously had lower numbers are getting worried after seeing spikes in infections in their areas. The rising positivity rate among people testing for the coronavirus in the Eastern Cape, for example, is a cause for concern there, to the point that the Premier, Oscar Mabuyane, and the Health MEC, Nomakosazana Meth, addressed a media briefing today at the Nelson Mandela Academic Hospital in Umtata about the rising infection rate in that province. The Eastern Cape is currently dealing with more than 6,300 active cases.
The Eastern Cape recorded a positivity rate of 16% during the last 24-hour testing cycle. The two metros, Nelson Mandela Bay and Buffalo City, are reported to have the highest numbers. Government is urging caution.
COVID-19 cases are increasing at a rapid rate in our province. Active cases currently stand at about 6,368, and on the 12th of December alone, we recorded about 2,097 cases that were reported. We have also heard this week that our President Cyril Ramaphosa, has also tested positive for COVID-19. We wish all the people who have been diagnosed with the virus, including our President, a speedy recovery.
The rate of vaccination is also not satisfactory.
We can't hide the fact that the Department of Health has some financial constraints, which sometimes even the cars that we hire to do the outreaches to far-fetched and far-flung areas in terms of our deep rural. Sometimes we get those stops and goes, but we continue to try to get whatever we can get.
Mabuyane also touched on the serious issue of the death of initiates while the summer initiation season is underway.
We are also alarmed and disappointed by the continuing loss of life in the traditional initiation season, with 23 deaths recorded thus far. On top of that, we are currently having 51 hospital admissions with various complications that could have been avoided if men in communities played their part in the process.
Currently, just more than 2 million of the 6 million inhabitants of the Eastern Cape are vaccinated. Fundiswa Mhlepu, the SABC News, Mthatha.
Fundiswa there in the Eastern Cape. In the Free State, the Department of Health in that province says human behavior is a major contributing factor to the surge in COVID-19 infections. The department is also concerned about the low turnout for vaccination among young people. For the past few days, the province has recorded double the normal daily number of COVID-19 infections.
The Mangaung Metro municipality remains the epicenter of COVID-19 in the Free State, with more than 50,000 coronavirus infections recorded. For now, healthcare workers are not strained due to the low number of hospital admissions. However, the health department is concerned about the number of young people who get admitted.
Free State Provincial Government is concerned about the increasing numbers of infections in the province. We have moved on a seven-day moving average from 300 infections in the previous week, and today we are at 647, which is gravely concerning for us.
52% of the elderly population in the province has been vaccinated, but there is still mixed feelings about the vaccine.
Yes, I did vaccinate, even I have the proof of vaccination. Here is it.
Because we have to be safe. If you don't vaccine, you'll get infection, and you get COVID-19 is a dangerous thing.
Yeah, but still, I don't like this thing, vaccination.
Why?
Yeah, because call me a conspiracy theorist or whatever, but this whole thing is just not effective.
Outdoor activities have also been identified as a major factor contributing to the rise in coronavirus infections. About 70% of the humanitarian organization Red Cross staff members have tested positive for COVID-19 in Bloemfontein. The organization has been on the front line assisting the department with contact tracing and vaccination, but now its main offices have closed down for decontamination.
The current variant has affected us so badly that we had to close our offices, and 70% of our volunteers and staff have tested positive. So at this moment, we actually requested them, all of them, even those that have tested negative, to actually stay at home for the next coming 10 days. And then we'll continue with our services after the quarantine.
The department says it has heeded the call by the provincial government to increase vaccination sites in healthcare facilities across the province. Aphumelele Mdlalane, SABC News, Bloemfontein.
Let's now welcome from the Free State Health Department, Priscilla Mnyobo. Priscilla, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. How worried are you as the department that if, the trend we are seeing now, or we've been seeing over the past few days especially, if it gets worse or continues in this trajectory, it's going to be difficult for your department to cope?
Good evening, viewers. Good evening to the viewers of SABC2. The department is indeed extremely concerned, as we heard even in the Insert Club, that even the supporting partners have also been negatively affected by the increase in outbreaks amongst our healthcare workers. That's our main concern. The actual responders to this pandemic are also actually now negatively affected. We've experienced sporadic outbreaks amongst our healthcare system, particularly even the ones that are providing the vaccinations, both from the vaccinators themselves and even the support staff. So the province is indeed very concerned.
In fact, that's what is troubling about your particular situation, the fact that it is the people who are supposed to help those that are infected that are now increasingly, being infected. And as a province, have you come up with any strategy, or what do you think you're going to be able to do, to stop what we're seeing on its tracks?
What we are trying to do is to reduce the contacts of the teams. What we have picked up as one of the contributing factors is that they travel in the same vehicles to go to the vaccination sites. Even those that are at work would share bathrooms, they would share tea rooms. So we are trying to minimize as much contact amongst our healthcare workers as much as possible, because what we've seen with this variant is that it's highly transmissible. The number of mutations on the Omicron makes it extremely transmissible and easily infecting others that are in your close proximity. So we are trying to minimize as much contacts. We know that it's not possible because there are people that need to work together, but also strengthen even the infection prevention and control measures, including putting on masks and sanitizing and maintaining social distance within our health systems.
Well, hopefully you'll be able to, succeed, or that strategy will work. But let's talk broadly now about, the people. Mangaung is is where the largest concentration of people who have been infected are. Not surprising. It's the capital of the province. That's where economic activity, a lot of things happen at a much larger scale than in the rest of the province. What is your plan? What have you started doing, if anything, to really try and contain the numbers and make sure that they don't get worse?
As you've mentioned already, Vio, Mangaung Metro is the economic hub of the province. It is also the epicenter, unfortunately, of our infections still in the province. We are seeing 30% of daily increases of cases coming from Mangaung Metro, particularly Bloemfontein, as economic hub. So what we are trying to do is to strengthen our risk communication and engagement with our communities to minimize those large gatherings that we've seen, particularly amongst our youth, some of them still attributing this to the myth that COVID is still not the truth and reality. So we are really strengthening and packaging our communication, particularly focusing on this young group. You can see even our numbers are still fueled by the age group 20 to 40. So this is the youth, these are the youth that is mostly social, that tends to go to large gatherings. So we're packaging our communication. We're also partnering with the universities in the province to also reach out to the youth, because at the moment, these are still the age group and age cohort that is largely affected. And Mangaung is a very young population as compared to other districts in the province.
And I mean, it's the same cohort, certainly in the insert that we played, that was also, expressing, being all skeptical about, vaccination, which, is probably, the biggest defense we can have against this virus. What are you doing, to deal with that? What messaging are you taking to communities to really try and, debunk those myths that some of these young people may have, internalized?
As I mentioned, we have collaborated with TVET, we have collaborated with the universities, we've collaborated with industries where most of our youngsters are, where most of our youngsters are employed. We have even taken vaccinations to the workplaces of where our youngsters are. But we must also commend them. The contribution and the increase of the youth in the province, particularly your 18 to 34, for the past 2 months, they have largely been participating in registering and in taking up the vaccine. So at the moment, we are sitting around 34% of that age cohort that have vaccinated. So we are encouraging those that are still hesitant, those that are still skeptical that vaccines do work. They must just look to their next door young person who has taken up the vaccine, and most of them are not infected, and most of them have been protected through the vaccination. So we are using a mixture of messages to reach out, social media mining, just to get to the root of the hesitancy and respond accordingly then based on the feedback that we're getting from the social media.
Okay, and that's where we're going to leave it for this evening. Thank you very much for your time, Priscilla Mnyobo, who is from the Free State Health Department. That province, certainly from the infections that it has had so far, the people who are supposed to help people who are infected and affected are in fact the ones currently being infected. They have to stay away from work, which means that the efforts of that province, in trying to help but also manage, the pandemic being hampered, because those frontline workers are the ones who now have to isolate and do all the other things that mean that they can't be at work. Hopefully, that situation will be contained before it gets worse. Women are still underrepresented in the judiciary. That's according to the annual judiciary report released by Acting Chief Justice Raymond Zondo. 49% of judges and magistrates were women in the country. Zondo released the report, which highlighted the justice system's performance for the period April 2020 and March 2021 via live stream this morning.
2020 was the year that caused much disruption, and the judiciary was not spared. The justice system has seen delays as it's tried to adjust to the new regulations.
The judiciary was not spared from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on its operations and had to quickly adapt to the new normal and switch from physical to virtual court proceedings and operations. We are grateful to the Office of the Chief Justice for managing this difficult transition as well as they have done under the trying circumstances of lockdown.
The pandemic also delayed interviews for justices. This has led to vacant posts in the courts. The Apex Court is one of the benches that has posts still not filled.
No new appointments were made during the reporting period due to the fact that the Judicial Service Commission could not conduct interviews. There was, as a result of the lockdown measures implemented as part of, this was as a result of the lockdown measures implemented as part of the declaration of the national state of disaster in response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
While the judiciary is trying to transform, there's still a need for more women representation.
At the end of the reporting period under review, the establishment for judges comprised 234 judges in active service. 44% of those judges are women. The number of magistrates in active service is 1,726, of which 49% are women.
The annual report is released on Judiciary Day. It accounts on the performance of the judicial functions. Hasina Gori, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Well, joining us now is Zikhona Ndlebe, who is a researcher and advocacy officer at Judges Matter. Good evening, Zikhona. Thanks very much for your time this evening. I guess, in so many ways, this report was also about the former Chief Justice Mogoeng's performance appraisal, wasn't it?
Yes, definitely. It also highlighted the work of the former Chief Justice Mogoeng. And one of the important things that the Acting Chief Justice Raymond Zondo did note at the beginning of making his speech was that previously there was no Judiciary Day. Previously, the judiciary did not account to the general public until the former Chief Justice Mogoeng took up the position as the Chief Justice. And the annual report was first released in 2018. And ever since, there's been an accounting session each year that is conducted by the Chief Justice. So that is one of the legacies that the former Chief Justice Mogoeng has left in the judiciary.
Well, in singing his praises, the Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo saying, the former Chief Justice deserves praise and recognition for doing a number of things, among those credit for building a strong, independent, effective and efficient judiciary. Do you agree?
Well, we have not seen, I'm going to start, the starting point is that, yes, the judiciary is independent and it is strong, and it is one of the arms of government that has been able to hold a lot of people to account. For example, the former President Jacob Zuma has been held to account by the judiciary. So it is strong in that sense. And again, there have been a lot of allegations against the judiciary. And those allegations have not been proven. So that also speaks to the fact that we do have a strong judiciary. A lot of work still needs to be done in terms of caseload, as highlighted by the Acting Chief Justice, but I definitely agree with that sentiment.
That, even though there's still, even though there's still a lot of room for improvement, they have made significant, inroads in the 10 years that Chief Justice Mogoeng was at the helm.
Yes, there have been significant improvements in the judiciary. However, as we've also seen in previously, that there's definitely room for improvement, especially when it comes to judges being held accountable. We've seen with various conduct cases against judges that have taken a long time to be resolved, and there have been also complaints against the former Chief Justice Mogoeng that has not yet been resolved. But I don't think that the judiciary is not strong. So that is why I agree with the sentiments that were expressed by the acting Chief Justice.
Mm-hmm. Now, questions, were asked to the Deputy Chief Justice about sloppy work, some thought, by some of the top court judges. Of course, the Deputy Chief Justice, saying he's confident that every endeavor is being made to actually, everyone makes, an endeavor to improve on their work.
Yes. So the question that was asked relating to the work of the justices, it related to the work of the justices at the Constitutional Court, because we have seen that there have been complaints about the quality of the judgments that were handed down. However, the acting Chief Justice said that he is confident that even though there are some concerns about the work of the Constitutional Court and the judgments that are handed by the Constitutional Court, the Constitutional Court is performing its duties, and so are the other courts. That is what was said by the acting Chief Justice.
Mm-hmm. Well, he himself, of course, he is in the running for the position of Chief Justice, and so are three other senior judges. And we're expecting the President, the Deputy Chief Justice said within this week, to make public his decision.
Can you please repeat your question?
I'm saying, well, the Deputy Chief Justice, who was, of course, presenting that report, is himself one of the front runners, in the, as the President has to settle on a name for the Chief Justice of the country.
Yes, that's correct. He's one of the front runners. We've got the Judge President of Gauteng, Judge President Dunstan Mlambo. We've got Justice Mandi Zamaya, who is the President of the Supreme Court of Appeal. We've got Justice Raymond Zondo as well, as you've mentioned. And we've also got one Constitutional Court judge, and his name has just left me. I'm sorry. But Justice Zondo is one of the front runners. But we have to note that Justice Zondo does not have much time remaining in the judiciary. He has approximately 3 years, which means that if he were to be appointed, as good as he is, if he were to be appointed, that would mean that we would have to again look at the appointment of the next Chief Justice in 3 years' time. Whereas the other front runners who have been shortlisted have more years to serve in the judiciary on the bench. But that is not to say that Justice Zondo is not suitable for appointment as the next Chief Justice. However, we need to consider a lot of factors when it comes to the appointment of the next Chief Justice.
Of course, another thing that the Deputy Chief Justice lamented, in fact, was something he put up there, was the gender equality in the judiciary, that even though strides have been made, he said, a lot more work still needs to be done.
That is absolutely correct. That is absolutely correct. There are women that have been appointed in the judiciary in the past few appointments, but there's still a lot of strides that need to be made to ensure that there is transformation within the judiciary. And that speaks to Section 174 of the Constitution, which speaks to transformation in terms of race and gender. And in this regard, we're speaking about gender. There are women, but there's definitely still a long way to go. So the JSC needs to ensure that more women are appointed in the judiciary. However, it's not only, as we've said previously, as judges matter, it is not only about gender and race, but it is also about what a candidate has to offer to the judiciary.
Well, I'm tempted to say, considering your answers to the last two questions, could that be a good enough reason then for perhaps the president to consider for that position the only woman in the group? You're not going to answer that, are you?
Well, President Maya is, I'm not going to answer it directly, but I'm going to say that President Maya is one of the good candidates that we have for appointment as the next Chief Justice. And if we were to have a woman Chief Justice, that would be great. She would be the second woman Chief Justice, in addition to, I forgot her, I'm just her name, but there is one woman Chief Justice that was recently appointed this year. And President Maya would also be one of those people that are appointed in that position as the face of the judiciary. If she were to be appointed, that would be great. But again, it is not only about gender and race. It is about what she has to offer. And I am quite confident that she would be able to offer a lot to the judiciary. As we've seen her work in the Supreme Court of Appeal, she's been able to lead that court accordingly, and she has been able to ensure that it runs effectively and efficiently, and she's been able to ensure that there is collegiality in the Supreme Court of Appeal. She's done a great job there, and perhaps she would be able to do a great job as a Chief Justice as well.
What for you is the one thing that perhaps the Deputy Chief Justice didn't touch on in that report, or didn't put a great deal of emphasis on, but which you think could actually, make if it was to be done or improved upon, it could make a huge difference in, in the judicial system?
That's a very good question. The one concern for me when it comes to the report that was handed down by the acting Chief Justice is the lower courts. So the acting Chief Justice acknowledged that there will be no accounting made in respect of the magistracy and the lower courts, because the lower courts fall within the Department of Justice. And there was recently a security breach in the Department of Justice, and the leadership in the judiciary agreed that there should not be any accounting in respect of the lower courts because of that security breach. But now that is concerning, because if you consider the fact that magistrates' courts are the first port of call for the general public, and most people will not see the High Court, the Supreme Court of Appeal, or the Constitutional Court. The first port of call is the magistracy. But there was no accounting for the magistracy. That is a concern. And even though I understand that there was a security breach and the information in respect of the magistracy might have been tampered with, but the question is, what will be done by the judiciary and the Department of Justice to ensure that there is accountability when it comes to the lower courts as well? And what will be done to ensure that there is not another security breach in the future, to ensure that there's accountability for the lower courts as well? So that was a huge concern for me. And I'm hoping that that issue will be resolved, even if it means that the issue of a single judiciary has to be discussed between the Office of the Chief Justice and the Department of Justice. If that is what has to be done, I think so be it, because at the end of the day, as I've said, the magistracy is the first port of call for many people.
Okay. That's where we're going to leave it. Thank you so much for your time, Zikhona Ndlebe, who is a researcher and advocacy officer at Judges Matter, on the back of that report released today by the Deputy Chief Justice, Raymond Zondo, highlighting the justice system's performance for the period April 2020 and March 2021. And that's how we come to the end of this evening's show. Do join us again tomorrow night, 8 p.m. sharp. Have a good night.